Hey guys, Shane here, Flight Simmer. Welcome to another episode of Test Drive. Now, if you haven't seen one of these before, this is where I take a scenery, a utility, or an aircraft. I'll take it for a spin around the block and give you my first impressions and is it worth a value for money. In today's video, we are going to be checking out JustFlight's new release into the X-Plane 11 world, which is the TB-10 and the TB-20. We'll be taking a flight of the little cousin, which is the TB-10, around L52, Ocean County in X-Plane 11, and doing some pattern flying. If you're not familiar with the Cicada TB series, they were introduced in 1975. They're not in production anymore. I think just under 2,200 were built, and it costs about $520,000 brand new. I think US if you wanted to pick one up. They are a very spacious 5-seater aircraft. The TB-20 has a retractable undercarriage and a high horsepower engine. I think it's about 250 horses, while the TB-10 doesn't have a retractable gear and the engine horsepower is about 180, and that's what we're going to be taking flight today. JustFlight's version of the Cicada TB family, they've used 4K textures and taken advantage of X-Plane 11's PBR, but mind you, the reflections on this aircraft are probably the lowest I've seen for a lot of the X-Plane 11 releases as of late. They've also used a detailed mapping right down to the rivets on the aircraft. They have also included numerous of animations including passenger doors, baggage doors, cockpit windows, sun visors, oil cover, dipsticks, engine access door, and many more. Ground equipment included chocks, pilot cover, engine intake covers, and tie downs. And as I mentioned before, JustFlight have included the two aircraft in the package, the TB-10 and the TB-20. Main difference between the two is the 20 has a retractable undercarriage and a larger horsepower engine than the TB-10. It is great to see that JustFlight have used the same type of menu system that they did in the Arrow releases in X-Plane to help you customize your aircraft for the flight. As I'm going through here, you can see that I'm opening all the passenger doors for the pilot and the co-pilot and the dipstick and whatnot. It really helps you set up the flight. It's got some quick buttons for instruments for the 2D, such as transponder and the autopilot. I've never personally used them, but some people do. You can also adjust your reflections at ease, such as your gauges and your windshield reflections. I'm using both for this aircraft, but mind you, when I did the flying the Arrow, I don't use the gauges, but this one seems to look a little bit better. You got your fuel and also your weight and balance for the aircraft. You can adjust your sounds. I find that the environmental sounds, the wind sounds on the aircraft are extremely loud, so I had to turn those down. And one of my favorite features is the knee board with your checklist during your flight. So here you can see for the pre-flight, I can check off what stage I'm up to. So really cool feature. And one of the cool things, you can adjust the size of this. So when you're in the aircraft, you can put it basically where your knee would be. So really cool. It also includes a flight computer, so you can check your fuel burn and other bits and pieces. You can also have a logbook to virtually log your flights, and also a manual tow. You can position your aircraft around to the right spots. Within saying that, let's jump into the cockpit and get this thing into the air. On first impressions of entering the cockpit of the Cicada TB-10, you're probably thinking, wow, it looks like a car. Well, that was my first impressions anyway. It's a very interesting looking cockpit, but JustFlight have done an accurate rendition of the aircraft. They've called it a nice wear and tear look. So not everything is modeled in the aircraft, so they haven't modeled the circuit breakers like they did with the Arrow, but pretty much everything on the front dash will work. You know, things like the seats and stuff look incredibly detailed. It's a very small cockpit, only a 5-seater, so it looks quite neat. And I'll tell you what though, this aircraft does perform very well in VR and looks absolutely awesome. But within saying that, I think it's time to get the engine started. So we're just going to remove the front yoke, and I'm going to put the fuel onto the right, but I do have the fuel selected to do auto, so it will do it for me, but I need to turn it on to 1 to get it going. So turn the masters on and the nav on, and you can hear the noise of the aircraft, which sounds really cool. I love the noises inside the cockpit. So fuel pump is done, and we will get the aircraft started. So on that one I didn't have the revs up high enough, so that's why we had that drop, but all good, we are started. So generators are on, we'll turn the avionics on, and we'll get prepped now for the flight. So I'll come back to you in a second, and we'll begin our taxi. So we are all ready to go, just turning the taxi lights on. We'll release the brake and get going. So if you missed before, we are at L52, so the new Orbx scenery that they're doing as freeware, so Ocean County. So we're going to do some 2 touch and goes. We're going to do 3 patterns, left-hand patterns around L52. I'm just going to test the brake up here. Normally I do a lot more cutscenes. This one I'm going to take you around, and you're going to see a bit more of the flight, because it's an interesting aircraft, and I've done 1 quick takeoff, 1 quick landing. So now I'm trying to find that sweet spot and learn aircraft. So I thought I would take you guys along with me, the way that I learn an aircraft. So brakes work okay. We're going to pull up here. I've got no traffic on for this flight because I'm doing patterns. The weather is pretty grey out there. It's a pretty grim looking day, but we'll pop the brakes on, and now we'll turn our strobe on and the transponder on, and turn the taxi lights off and turn the landing lights on. But like I was saying, normally when I get an aircraft to do a test drive, I will take it and do a couple of patterns and try to find the sweet spot and learn the aircraft. So generally I do that, and you guys don't see any of that, but this particular test drive I thought, oh, I'll take you along, and we will check that out. So we've got 1 notch of flaps in, and I'm going to use about 75% of the throttle as we take off. It is short runway, but I think we should be okay. So you really have to work your rudder pedals with the TB-10 and TB-20 down a runway, so you can't let it go. But one thing, it doesn't screech around like some of the other GA aircraft I've flown in X-Plane, which is quite good. So it's been modelled there. But once we hit 65 nautical miles with our speed, it was a little pullback with flaps, 1 notch of flaps, and she lifted up quite easy. So very cool. But we're going to go up to about 800 feet, and once we hit 800 feet we should be on our downwind leg, and then we'll start descending into Ocean County runway 11. But we're going to make our left hand turn, and I'm still trying to find the sweet spot of the aircraft here. But one thing is it's a bit of a brick. It's a bit of a flying car. I've nicknamed this the flying car because it feels like the lights on the dash there is like the lights in my car. They turn something on and it lights up. So I call it the flying car. But yeah, it sinks very easy. I notice when flying the aircraft. So we're going to make another turn down here, and that'll be our downwind leg, and we'll be up to about 800 feet, and then we'll start descending into 52. So a very grim day. The base of the clouds are about 1,500 feet, I believe. So this is on real-time weather, but mind you, when I film this video, it's real-time weather in the US. So, and it's night time, where it's Australian my time, so which is about 12 degrees Celsius. So that's why I've got a bit of a haze. So making another left-hand turn. As you can see, the dash here and all the instruments is all modeled in 3D. With most Just Fly aircraft, it is GTN 750 compatible. I haven't used it. I like pretty much using all the default stuff that come with the aircraft. So using the default GPS, not using the autopilot today because we are doing some pattern flying. Just taking a look at runway 11 to make sure that we are running parallel, and we look like we are. So they've modeled some systems in here, such as things like the spark plug fouling, the vapor lock condition. Also, they've said that they've modeled the circuit breakers within the failures for X-Plane 11. So I think they've modeled it in there, but obviously I couldn't play around with the circuit breakers and switch them on and switch them off, but I think they've been modeled into the failure, which is always cool. On the TB-20, I did notice with the retractable landing gear, the tyres move around at different speeds. So I just popped up the flaps there, and that's what pushed the nose up. So I'm just trimming quite quickly to find that sweet spot again. And also when you're landing, the gears have suspension on them too on the TB-20. So I'm going to keep flying. Just as we passed over the beach up here, we're going to turn left, and then we'll be able to basically turn onto our final quite quickly into runway 11 for our first touch and go. There's also 10 liveries including in the package, so 5 with the TB-10 and another 5 with the TB-20 and a couple of white ones, so one white one each. Only one US livery, so a lot of the liveries are European, so Germany and Great Britain and so forth, but only one US, which is the one that we are flying today. And I would have to say one of the favourite things with this aircraft are the custom sounds. So when you turn on the master, you can hear all the instruments sort of loading up and the aircraft coming to life. And also when you turn the fuel pump on, you can, even when you turn the nav lights on. And one of the really cool things that I'm starting to see in some of the aircraft that are getting modelled is when you turn the strobe on, you've got that you know, that little nip sort of that's probably not the best way to say it, but you know, that noise every time the strobe turns on, you can hear it in your headphones, which is really cool. So all that sort of stuff's being modeled, so the sound on the aircraft is really cool. So we're making another left-hand turn. Oh, look at those clouds. They don't seem very nice at all. So we line up here, and I'm going to take a look and see where the airport is. So we've got a little bit left to go, but my speed's dropping off. I'm finding through this whole flight I'm really adjusting the speed, so anything below 60 is unflyable, but anything around about the 60 level makes it really hard. It's a bit of a brick. So making our left hand turn, and we're going to begin our first touch and go, and we'll see how we end up. The Just Flight TB-10 comes with a bucket load of manual. So if you're that virtual pilot that likes reading a lot of manuals and references and procedures, it's all there. You can read it all before you jump into the aircraft. I'm a little bit different. I like to jump in the aircraft, learn from experience, watch a YouTube video or two, and then go back and read the manual and refine my experience in the aircraft. But if you like manuals, there's heaps there. So we're coming close to our first approach on a runway 11. I'm a little bit high, so trying to lose the height. We'll see how we go. Quite interesting if I can stick it without a bounce or a you know, a heavy landing. So pretty mediocre for the first run in, but one thing I didn't know, I actually had 2 notches of flaps instead of the original one, so that would hence the reason why I was flying so slow. So we're going to take it up to 800 feet and do another pattern. While I'm doing that, I'm going to do a bit of a montage, and I'll come back to you as we're approaching into our second touch and go to a runway 11. Hopefully you enjoyed that quick montage as we did one more pattern. So we're coming to runway 11 again, a little bit quicker, only 1 notch of flaps this time. So we will see how we go. Well, that time around we all just got about 2 inches short. I slammed it into the runway 11. So we're going to give it one more try and come to a full stop landing. So we'll quickly jump ahead and go straight into the approach for the last one and see if we can nail it this time. Okay, so final approach on this one. I'm a little bit lower, so not as high as the last 2. So let's hope this will be the best one, but certainly feels a lot better approach than the previous 2. And I think I botched that one up too. Landed on the left back wheel first, then the right, and then the nose gear. But that's the way the cookie crumbles. We're going to turn off here. So my final first impressions of the Cicada TB-10 and 20 from Just Flight. I think it is a pretty good all-round aircraft. If you want something to, you know, low and slow, you can fly quick in the TB-20. Something a bit slower, you can go in the 10. There's certainly enough to keep you occupied during the flights there. I think it's probably a little bit higher priced for my liking, but all in all it's good quality, and if you want a good quality VR aircraft, I'd definitely run out and get this because it does look awesome in VR. So thank you very much for watching. If you like this type of format of the test drive, let me know in the comments below, and if you're new to the channel and you want to stick around, click on the next video. I'm sure you're going to like it. So thank you very much for watching. My name is Shane, Oz Flight Simmer. I'll see you on the next episode. Cheers, goodbye.